My best friend's last will and testament wasn't on paper. It was a time bomb made of code set to go off in 7 days. And I was the only person on Earth who knew how to find the bomb, how to arm it, or how to betray him and defuse it. It was his life's work, a gift to the world that I was convinced would burn it all down, and he had made me the one person who saw the monster in the machine, the executor of his digital ghost. The email arrived on a Tuesday, exactly 1 month after Alex's funeral. The subject line was simple: Starka for Liam. The sender was a shell account Alex had set up years ago, our digital dead man's switch. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, suffocating silence of my home office. For a month, I'd been navigating the surreal landscape of a world without him. I'd helped his wife, Grace, with the arrangements, fielded calls from distant relatives, and sat through endless, hollow condolences. I thought the hardest part was over. I was so wrong. Inside the email was a string of encrypted text and a single, chilling instruction: you know what to do. Project Prometheus. 1 week. My blood ran cold. Prometheus. We hadn't called it that in almost 5 years. It was our baby, the project we'd started in his parents' garage with nothing but cheap coffee, ramen noodles, and a shared dream of changing the world. We were going to build an AI that could learn not just from data, but from concepts, from the abstract. A true thinking machine, open source and available to everyone. It was brilliant, revolutionary, and utterly terrifying. I was the one who pulled the plug. I saw the abyss we were staring into. An AI that could truly understand and manipulate human behavior, ideology, and desire in the hands of, well, anyone. The potential for chaos was unthinkable. Misinformation on a scale that could topple governments. Targeted manipulation that would make social media algorithms look like a child's toy. I tried to make Alex see it, but he was blinded by the beauty of his creation. He saw a tool that could eradicate disease, solve climate change, and unite humanity. I saw a weapon of mass destruction with a friendly user interface. Our disagreement, the only real fight we ever had, fractured our partnership. I walked away, taking a soul-crushingly boring but safe job at a corporate tech firm. Alex, fueled by what I saw as hubris, pushed on alone. And now this. His final move from beyond the grave. A time-locked folder on a server I hadn't accessed in years, set to release the source code for Prometheus in exactly 1 week. The world would get his gift whether it was ready or not. Whether I was ready or not. My hands trembled as I logged into the old server. The muscle memory was still there, the familiar command lines a ghostly echo of a life I'd left behind. And there it was, a directory named Prometheus Final. Inside, a single compressed file and a countdown timer, ticking down second by agonizing second. 167 hours, 59 minutes, and 42 seconds. Alex was a genius, but he was also an arrogant bastard. He believed in his vision so completely that he couldn't imagine anyone disagreeing. He must have thought that with him gone, I'd see the light. That I'd honor his legacy and ensure his masterpiece saw the world. He'd made me the sole digital executor, giving me the keys to his entire online existence, his code repositories, his cloud storage, his social media. He trusted me. He trusted me to finish the job. But he'd also left a backdoor, a failsafe, a ridiculously complex decryption key that could halt the release. It was a failsafe only I would know how to use, because its seed was based on a private joke from our university days, a conversation we'd had on a rain-slicked night about the nature of secrets. The problem was Alex hadn't just created a key. He had woven it into something else, something deeply personal and hidden from everyone, especially his wife. I stared at the timer, each tick a hammer blow against my skull. For 5 years, I'd slept soundly, knowing Prometheus was locked away, a brilliant but dangerous idea gathering digital dust. Now, the ghost in the machine was waking up, and Alex had placed the kill switch in my hand. But using it meant detonating a different kind of bomb, one aimed directly at the heart of the woman he loved. Grace. She was the other reason this was so impossible. I'd known her almost as long as I'd known Alex. She was his rock, his biggest cheerleader. Since his death, she'd been clinging to his legacy like a life raft. She talked incessantly about his genius, his vision, how he was going to change the world. She saw him as a fallen god, a martyr to progress. How could I tell her that her god had a dark side? That his magnificent obsession had a price, and that he had hidden that price from her in the darkest corners of their life together. To stop the release, I needed the key. To get the key, I had to unlock Alex's secret, a part of his life he had meticulously walled off. And that secret was hidden in a place only I could access, but that Grace held the physical path to. It was a perfect, cruel piece of emotional engineering. Alex had chained my loyalty to him with my loyalty to her. I spent the rest of the day in a fugue state, pacing my apartment. The glow of the countdown timer seared onto my retinas. My pragmatic, risk-averse brain screamed at me to just find a way to kill the server, to pull the plug and walk away. But it wasn't that simple. The system was distributed, mirrored across a dozen servers on 3 continents. A classic Alex move, brilliant, paranoid, and almost impossible to dismantle without the proper authorization. The only clean way to stop it was his way. The key. That night I dreamt of fire, not the cleansing fire of the mythical Prometheus, but a raging digital inferno consuming everything in its path, with Alex's silhouette laughing in the flames. I woke up in a cold sweat, the choice laid bare before me. I could betray my friend's final wish, the culmination of his life's work, and potentially save the world from a danger it didn't even know existed. Or I could honor his memory, keep his secrets, and unleash a power I was convinced would lead to ruin. The timer ticked on. 6 days, 23 hours. The bomb was live. And the only person who could defuse it was me. I had to talk to Grace. Walking up to Alex and Grace's front door felt like marching to my own execution. The perfectly manicured lawn, the cheerful yellow door, it all felt like a facade, a stage set for a tragedy. I'd been here 1,000 times for barbecues, game nights, and quiet evenings with a bottle of wine. Now, every brick seemed to judge me. I rehearsed my opening line a dozen times on the drive over, and every version sounded hollow and manipulative. Hey Grace, so sorry about your dead husband, but I need to rifle through his private things to stop a potential digital apocalypse he secretly set in motion. Can I get you a coffee? She opened the door before I could even ring the bell, as if she'd been waiting. Her eyes were puffy and her smile was a fragile, brittle thing, but she was still Grace. She wore one of Alex's old university sweatshirts, the fabric faded and worn. It was like she was trying to wrap herself in what was left of him. Liam, I was just thinking about you, she said, her voice raspy. She ushered me into the living room, a space that was once filled with Alex's booming laughter but was now heavy with a cathedral-like silence. His presence was everywhere, in the half-finished crossword on the coffee table, the dog-eared science fiction novel on the armchair, the faint scent of his cologne that still clung to the air. "How are you holding up?" I asked, the words feeling clumsy and inadequate. "Some days are better than others," she admitted, sinking onto the sofa. "Today's a hard one. I keep expecting him to walk through that door, complaining about a bug in his code or excited about some new breakthrough." She looked at me, her gaze piercing. "You're the only one who really understood that part of him, Liam. His work. I tried, but it was a different language." My gut twisted. This was my opening, the one I'd been dreading. "Actually, Grace, his work is sort of why I'm here," I began, my voice betraying my nerves. "As his digital executor, I'm trying to organize his assets, his online life. It's complicated." Her expression softened with sympathy. "Of course. Anything you need, just ask. I want to make sure his legacy is protected. He was working on something incredible, you know. He called it Prometheus. He said it would be his gift to the world." There it was. His gift. The word felt like a slap in the face. "I know," I said carefully. "We started it together, remember?" A flicker of something, sadness, maybe regret, crossed her face. "He missed you, Liam, after you left the project." He never said it, not in so many words, but I know he did. He always said you were his balance, the anchor that kept his ship from flying too close to the sun. The irony was a bitter pill. Alex's ship hadn't just flown too close to the sun. He had strapped rockets to it and aimed for the core, and he'd left me holding the fire extinguisher. I needed to get to his office. The key, the seed for the decryption algorithm, was tied to a specific date. A date I remembered with perfect, painful clarity. It wasn't a birthday or an anniversary. It was the date of a massive professional failure, a project from our early days that had imploded spectacularly, costing us a huge client and almost bankrupting our fledgling company. Alex had taken it hard, spiraling into a depressive state for weeks. But during that time, he'd bought a piece of art, a strange, abstract sculpture of a broken Icarus. He said it was a reminder of the danger of hubris. That sculpture was the key. He would have hidden the physical component of the decryption key, a custom-made USB drive, somewhere inside it. "Grace," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I need to look through his office. Specifically, I need to check his old hardware, some of his physical backups, just to make sure everything is secure." "Of course," she said without hesitation, her trust in me absolute and agonizing. "Take as long as you need." Alex's office was just as he'd left it. Whiteboards were covered in complex equations and flowcharts, a chaotic map of our brilliant mind. Stacks of books on machine learning and philosophy teetered on every surface. It felt like walking into a tomb. And there, on a pedestal in the corner, was the sculpture. A twisted, metallic figure with shattered wings plummeting downward. The monument to his greatest failure. My hands felt clammy as I approached it. Grace stood in the doorway, watching me with a sad, curious expression. I couldn't just grab it and break it open. I had to be careful. "I remember when he bought this," I said, running a hand over the cool metal. "He never told me why he was so drawn to it." Grace's eyes welled up. "That was during a dark time. After you two lost that big contract. He felt like such a failure. He told me that statue represented him, a man who had tried to fly and had his wings melted." She took a shaky breath. "But he said he kept it to remind himself that even after falling, you have to get up and build new wings. That's when he poured everything into Prometheus. He was determined it would be his redemption. My stomach churned. She saw it as a symbol of his resilience. To me, it was a warning sign he'd ultimately ignored. He hadn't learned from his fault, he'd just decided to build bigger wings. Consequences be damned. I examined the base of the sculpture. It was solid marble, heavy and seamless. But I knew Alex. He loved puzzles, hidden compartments. There had to be a mechanism. My fingers traced the edges, searching for a seam, a button, anything. Nothing. The countdown clock was ticking in my head. 5 days left. My frustration must have shown on my face. "Is everything all right, Liam?" Grace asked, her voice soft with concern. "I'm fine. Just a lot to process," I lied. My mind was racing. If it wasn't in the base, where could it be? I thought back to the night we'd discussed the nature of secrets. We were drunk on cheap whiskey, arguing about cryptography. The best place to hide something, Alex had slurred, a conspiratorial glint in his eye, isn't in a locked box. It's inside something that everyone can see, but no one ever thinks to look at. Something so personal, so painful, that they'd be too polite to ever touch it. My eyes darted around the room, past the bookshelves, past the computer equipment, and landed on a framed photo on his desk. It was a picture of Alex and his father, taken years ago, shortly before his father passed away. Alex idolized him. His father's death was a raw, unhealed wound for him. Something he never talked about. Something too painful to touch. The frame was a thick, custom-made wooden one. It looked solid, but it was too deep for just a photograph. My heart began to pound. It couldn't be. That was too cruel, even for Alex. "Grace," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "this picture, can I see it?" She looked confused but nodded. Of course. That was his favorite. I picked it up. It was heavier than it should have been. I turned it over. The back was covered in felt, but I could feel a faint ridge underneath. A hidden seam. My blood turned to ice. This was it. The key to stopping the apocalypse was hidden inside Alex's most painful memory. But to get to it, I would have to literally break it apart in front of his wife. This was the trap he had set. To save the world, I'd have to shatter Grace's world first. And as I stood there, holding that frame, I realized Alex's gift wasn't just the code. It was this impossible, agonizing choice. It was his final, twisted test of my loyalty. The weight of the picture frame in my hands was immense, far heavier than its physical mass. It felt like it contained the entirety of my dilemma. In one hand, the means to stop a global catastrophe; in the other, the tool to inflict a deeply personal one. Grace watched me, her brow furrowed with a gentle confusion that made it all so much worse. She had no idea she was standing on a precipice, and that I was the one about to push her over the edge. "Liam, what is it?" she asked, her voice pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. I couldn't do it. Not like this. I couldn't just smash her husband's favorite photograph in front of her and offer a half-baked explanation about digital estates. I needed a different approach. I needed a reason, a justification she could understand, even if it was a lie. "I think there might be a backup key in here," I improvised, tapping the frame. "A hardware key for his encrypted drives. He once told me he kept a master key in a place no one would ever think to look. It's just a precaution, to make sure I can access his work files and secure them properly." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Grace's expression shifted from confusion to a kind of pained understanding. Hidden in a picture of his dad. That's so like him. Hiding his logic inside his emotions. She gave me a watery smile. Okay, do what you need to do. Her permission was a stab of guilt, but it was also the opening I needed. I took the frame to Alex's workbench, a space usually littered with circuit boards and soldering irons. My hands, usually so steady when writing code or building servers, were shaking. I felt like a vandal, a grave robber. Using a small flathead screwdriver, I began to pry at the felt backing. It was glued down tight. Each rip of the fabric felt like a violation. Finally, a corner came loose. I peeled it back, and there it was. Not a hollow space, but something far more complex. The back of the frame was a shallow, sealed compartment, and inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was not just the small, metallic USB key I was expecting, but also a small, leather-bound journal. My breath hitched. I had never seen it before. Alex wasn't a writer. He was a man of code and algorithms, not prose. "What is that?" Grace asked, stepping closer. I carefully lifted the journal out. It was old, the leather worn smooth with time. There was no lock, no inscription. I looked at Grace, then at the journal, a fresh wave of dread washing over me. Alex's failsafe wasn't just a key. It was a confession. I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably his, but it was frantic, sprawling. The date at the top of the page was from 3 years ago, long after I had left the project. Prometheus is more than I ever imagined, it began. It's not just learning. It's understanding. It sees the patterns we miss, the hidden threads that connect us all. It can predict market crashes, election outcomes, even personal choices with terrifying accuracy. Liam was right. He was right to be afraid, but he was wrong to run. You can't turn your back on this kind of power. You have to control it. You have to become the master. I read the words aloud, my voice low and trembling. Grace sank into the desk chair, her face paling as I continued. Page after page detailed Alex's growing obsession. He described how he had started using Prometheus, his so-called gift to humanity, for his own ends. He had used it to make a series of uncannily successful stock trades, building a small fortune that Grace knew nothing about. He had used it to analyze political trends, feeding anonymous, hyper-targeted articles to fringe websites to see if he could subtly shift public opinion on a local issue. He was testing it, sharpening it into a weapon. The final entries were the most damning. They were written in the last few months of his life, after his diagnosis. The doctors say a few months. A year if I'm lucky. It's not enough time. I won't get to see my work finished. I won't get to guide it. So I'm leaving it to the world. A final, grand experiment. Liam will be the executor. He's the only one I trust to understand. He'll see the countdown. He'll have a choice. My legacy in one hand, his fear in the other. I wonder which one he'll choose. And then, the final blow. The last page. The key to stop the release is tied to the Icarus sculpture, a symbol of my failure. But the real key, the final password for the decryption program on the drive, is Grace. She is the only thing that ever made me feel human, the only thing that could ever make me question my ambition. She is my only regret. The password is the name of the restaurant where I proposed to her. A place I can no longer remember clearly. A memory I let fade while I was building my god of code. Liam will have to ask her for it. He'll have to make her a part of this. And in doing so, he'll have to show her this journal. He'll have to show her who I really became. The room was utterly still. The only sound was the faint hum of the server rack in the corner and Grace's quiet, choked sobs. She stared at the journal in my hands, her illusion of her perfect, brilliant husband shattering into a million pieces. He hadn't just hidden a secret from her. He had turned his back on their life together, replaced his love for her with a love for his own creation. And then, in his final act, he had designed a bomb to destroy her memory of him, forcing my hand to be the one that pushed the button. He hadn't just given me a choice between loyalty and ethics. He had made Grace the final obstacle. To stop the release, I didn't just need a physical key and a password. I needed her to give me the password, knowing full well what it would unleash, but also what it would protect. I had to ask a grieving widow to help me destroy her husband's life's work, using a memory of their happiest moment as the weapon. I looked from Grace's devastated face to the small, silver USB drive still sitting in the frame. The countdown was now under 48 hours. The tension in the room was unbearable, a crushing weight of grief, betrayal, and impossible responsibility. My lowest point wasn't just realizing the depth of Alex's obsession. It was understanding that he had made Grace's pain the final component of the disarm sequence. He hadn't just left me a choice, he'd left me a trial, and the final judgment rested in the hands of the woman whose world he had just burned to the ground. The silence in Alex's office stretched for what felt like an eternity, thick and heavy with unspoken accusations and fractured memories. Grace finally looked up from the journal, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. The idolizing glow she once had when speaking of Alex was gone, replaced by the flat, empty look of betrayal. "The restaurant," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. "It was called the Observatory. We went there on our 3rd anniversary. It was on a hill overlooking the city. He said he wanted to give me the stars." Her attempt at a smile was a grimace of pain. "I guess he was just practicing." That was it. The final piece of the key. The name of a place where a beautiful promise was made, now repurposed to dismantle a terrible one. Alex's cruelty, his intellectual arrogance, was staggering. He had turned their most cherished memory into a password, a final test of her love and my resolve. "Grace, I am so sorry," I said, the words feeling utterly useless. "I never wanted you to find out like this. I never wanted you to find out at all." She shook her head, not in denial, but with a slow, weary resignation. "No," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. "I needed to know. I've spent the last month, the last few years, really worshipping a ghost. A man who wasn't really there." She picked up the journal, holding it as if it were radioactive. "This man, the one who wrote this, I don't know him." She looked at me, her gaze clear and steady for the first time since I'd arrived. "This Prometheus. The thing he built while he was forgetting us. You believe it's dangerous?" "I do," I said, without a trace of doubt. "I saw the potential 5 years ago. What he's described in here, it's 1,000 times worse than I imagined. It's not a gift, Grace. It's a plague." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street, a world away from the digital chaos we were fighting. The countdown clock in my mind was screaming. Less than a day left. We were running out of time. "All his life," she said, her back to me, "he wanted to leave a mark on the world, to be remembered, like some great scientist or philosopher. He was so afraid of being ordinary." She turned back to me, her face set like stone. He will not be remembered for this. We can't let him. In that moment, she wasn't a grieving widow. She was a woman taking control of a narrative, refusing to let her husband's worst impulses become his legacy. She was making a choice. We spent the next hour working together. I plugged the custom USB drive into my laptop. It mounted, revealing a single command line application. No user interface, just a blinking cursor dot. Awaiting decryption sequence, it read. I typed in the long, complex string of characters from the seed I knew, the one based on our old university inside joke. The program responded. Sequence accepted. Awaiting final authentication. This was the final gate. The password. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I looked at Grace. She nodded, giving me the final, silent permission. I typed it in the observatory. The screen flickered. Authentication confirmed. Halting global release protocol. Prometheus archive will be permanently deleted in T-10 minutes. This action is irreversible. Do you wish to proceed? Y/N. The final question. The point of no return. It wasn't just deleting code. It was erasing the last vestiges of the man Alex had been, both the brilliant visionary and the obsessive monster. It was breaking a promise to my best friend to save him from himself. I typed Y and hit enter. A progress bar appeared on the screen. Deleting 1%. We sat there, in his office, surrounded by the ghosts of his ambition, and watched the bar slowly crawl across the screen. It was the quietest, most anticlimactic apocalypse I had ever witnessed. There was no explosion, no frantic race against time. Just the two of us, bearing silent witness as years of genius, obsession, and betrayal were wiped clean from a dozen servers around the globe. When the bar finally hit 100%, a single line of text appeared: protocol complete. The Prometheus archive has been deleted. It was over. The time bomb was defused. Grace let out a long, shuddering breath, a sound that was equal parts relief and profound sorrow. We didn't say anything for a while. There was nothing to say. The silence was filled with a future that wouldn't happen, the chaos averted, the weapon neutralized. In the end, I stayed and helped her pack up the office. We took down the whiteboards covered in his frantic genius. We boxed up the books. When we got to the Icarus sculpture, she paused. "I think I'm going to get rid of this," she said quietly. I simply nodded. The picture of Alex and his father was still on the workbench, its back broken and exposed. Grace picked it up, looked at it for a long moment, and then gently placed it in a box labeled "Donate." I left her house as the sun was setting, the world outside completely oblivious to the crisis it had just averted. Nothing had changed, yet everything had. I had betrayed my best friend's final wish, broken my promise, and shattered the heart of the woman he loved. But together we had contained the fire. I still don't know if I did the right thing. I upheld my ethical duty to society, but I betrayed a sacred trust. I protected Grace from a dangerous legacy, but I did so by revealing a painful truth that will haunt her forever. Alex wanted to be remembered, and in the end, I was the one who erased him. I'm left with a quiet, nagging question that keeps me up at night. I saved the world from my best friend, but was I a loyal friend in the end? So, tell me, what would you have done? Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.